Andrew, I feel like you're dancing around saying that Pop likes him. Am I wrong to read that into this? Have you never been popped, as the saying goes?
I was popped the very first time I went down there. Now, I do think I'm on his good side, probably because I think he thought I was Steve Novak last year. But I think normally, the very first time I covered the Spurs in San Antonio, I got there right as he did his pregame interview was starting, so I never picked up the media packet before I walked over there. And I didn't know the back and forth and the rhythm, where it's basically like someone asks him a question, and then he answers it, and then everyone waits for like 10 seconds, and then someone else asks him a question. And so I tried to break up what I thought was an awkward silence and asked him a really dumb question about who was going to guard Kevin Martin. And I didn't realize that Kevin Martin wasn't playing in the game because I never picked up the packet. And he just kind of looked at me and just goes, "I don't know. We'll see how the game goes." And that was it. So, I mean, he's done a couple times where he's kind of, screwed with my questions, or I've gotten the impression that he didn't think it was worthy of his time. But there's some guys who, if they ask the wrong question or if they assume something, he'll jump all over them and rip them to shreds. And that's fun to watch.
I've seen that. I saw it happen to Tim Varner, a mutual friend of ours, a very well-informed guy. He got popped to the point of eviscerated, and it's certainly, I think, unique to that situation. I'm wondering, you talk about how you interact in that situation. Do you think that being tall allows you to have a better rapport with players? Do you think that it might give you a leg up, pardon a terrible pun right there, in situations?
I've kind of wondered that myself. I think there is some of that because so many of the reporters who come in are under 6 feet, and they're old white guys, a lot of them. And so I don't think there's this kind of relationship, or there's no relation really between when you have these young, tall black athletes who are making millions of dollars, and then you have a bunch of old white guys who are under 6 feet who are asking them questions after the game. So I guess I have a little bit of advantage. I wouldn't say it's much because they don't know me as like an opponent from college basketball or something like that. But at the same time, I am tall, I'm young, so there is. I think there is some of that there. I don't expect them to get buddy with me or give me like a great quote or something just because I'm tall. But I think they're a little more open to me talking to them sometimes because of that.
I nominally cover a not very good basketball team, the Golden State Warriors, and there's sort of an obligatory sense of duty there. You're not really covering anything special or cool, but you're doing it because it's the NBA. And I had this conversation with another Spurs blogger, Wayne, where he said he wouldn't do it if the Spurs were like the Warriors. He wouldn't do it out of a sense of fandom. He's a fan of how they have this unique strategy and how they're doing something really special there. And I wonder if the same applies to you. If the Spurs didn't have Popovich, if they weren't doing something really cool and really different, would you have the interest that you do, and would you be covering the team? Or are you covering it not out of fandom, you're doing it because of what they are?
I'd say I do it because it's a passion. I mean, even if the Spurs were not credentialing bloggers, which I mean is a pretty progressive thing in terms of professional sports, them credentialing especially as many bloggers as they do. I mean, some games there's 7 or 8 of us there from various Spurs blogs. But yeah, I think I do it because it's a passion. It's just I've wanted to cover the NBA in some way, since I knew I wasn't going to make the NBA as a player. So I'd do it anyway. Even if they didn't credential us, I'd still be at home writing about it or something like that. So there is some of that. You do like to get involved as a fan, but for me, it's more of that. I mean, I can't speak to everybody else's motivations, but I think I enjoy it because it's fun, and it's what I drive almost an hour and a half from Austin down to San Antonio to cover the games each night and drive back after the games, and it wouldn't be as easy to do that if the passion wasn't there.
I mean, yeah, that is quite a schlep, as I'm sure is often said by people in San Antonio. I'm sure that's how it's often referred to.
Every time.
I think the Spurs are interesting. When I went on your podcast, we talked about various players who might be underrated. They have a slew of them. They have a bunch of players who may be underrated. I'd like you to choose the most underrated Spur among those players.
The most underrated. I would probably have to say, I'm gonna say Matt Bonner just because I like defending Matt Bonner. Because even though he's I'd say he is underrated in a general sense. I think a lot of basketball people realize some of the things that he does, but the general fan just sees him shoot threes and then sees him get scored on by Zach Randolph over and over again, and they just bash him. And I think my Matt Bonner defense has gone so far one direction just because the hate is so prevalent. But Bonner is a good team defender. He rarely ever misses a rotation. And he's not a great rebounder, but he does at least try and block out and allow someone else to get the rebound. And I think going into last night's game, he was allowing, I think, 0.53 points per possession in the post in 80 possessions on the season, which was baffling because when you think someone posting up Matt Bonner, you think that's game over. It's the other team scoring, but he's actually, because he's big and strong, he's actually a decent post defender. I mean, he's not going to defend anyone out on the perimeter, thank God, but getting him in the post, he's actually a pretty good defender. And then offensively, I mean, he's smart. He knows when to swing the ball. When he is knocking down shots, he's a great weapon for the Spurs. And even now, he's kind of developed this floater where if the defender closes out enough on him, he'll go by him and just loft up a little ball from 10 or 12 feet away from the hoop. So I'd say that Bonner is probably underrated just because people like to hate him so much, not so much that they don't know what he can do.
Nice. Yeah, well, I think that's maybe fair. I would also maybe argue, though, that a lot of the Spurs guys who we think of as underrated are, in fact, overrated because they play in such a great system, and were they to go elsewhere, they would not be maxed out. And I'm not going to let you respond. You have to say goodbye because we have a guest on the line here that we got to let in. But thanks a lot for coming on, Andrew.
They're all properly rated. All right, guys. Thanks for having me.